The day the lights went out. Opening present day. The alarms began at 0300 hours, Galactic Standard Time, not just on one station, not just in one sector. Across 17,000 star systems, spanning 4 galactic arms, emergency klaxons screamed into the void. Jump gate Theta 7 flickered, sputtered, and went dark. Medical stations on Kelvar Prime reported critical life support failures. Trade routes that had hummed with commerce for 3 centuries ground to a halt as navigation beacons simply stopped transmitting. Council Overseer Thalanvor stood in the central command chamber of the Galactic Nexus, his crystalline form refracting the crimson warning lights into 1,000 fractured stars. Around him, representatives from 47 species shouted over one another in a cacophony of panic and confusion. "This is impossible," hissed the Rexian ambassador, her scaled hands trembling. "These systems are autonomous, self-maintaining. They cannot simply fail." But they were failing. All of them. At once. And somewhere in the chaos, a junior technician from the Peltharian species whispered the words that would change everything. "Has anyone seen the humans?" Silence fell like a blade. Flashback, 347 years earlier. They had arrived with little fanfare. These strange bipedal creatures from a blue world in an unremarkable arm of the galaxy. Earth, they called it. A planet scarred by war, yet somehow still beautiful. The Galactic Council had debated for weeks whether to extend membership at all. Their average, Councillor Mirthas had declared, reviewing their biological assessments. Middle-range strength, moderate lifespan, no natural armor, no enhanced senses. They don't even have proper claws. The Xinthians had laughed, a sound like grinding stone. What could they possibly offer us? But humanity had one quality that their assessments never quite captured: adaptability, and patience, and an almost stubborn refusal to give up. So the Council granted them membership, conditional, limited. They could serve in support roles, technicians, medics, translators, nothing critical, nothing that required trust. The humans had accepted without complaint. The quiet centuries. For 347 years, humanity did exactly what was asked of them. And then they did more. They maintained the jump gates, yes, but they also improved them, reducing transit times by 12%. They staffed medical facilities, but they also revolutionized trauma protocols, saving millions of lives across dozens of species. They worked as translators, but they became diplomats, mediating disputes between races that had been enemies for millennia. Humans had a peculiar gift. They could talk to anyone. The militant Krathok warriors, who respected only strength. Humans, trained alongside them, earned their trust through shared sweat and blood. The artistic Velian philosophers who dismissed all lesser cultures. Humans sat at their feet, learned their poetry, and eventually became their collaborators. No one really noticed when humans became indispensable. It happened so gradually, so quietly. A human engineer here optimizing power distribution. A human nurse there comforting a dying Xinthian elder in their final moments. Human hands repairing, healing, building, connecting. They were everywhere and nowhere. The invisible foundation, upon which the great galactic civilization had built its golden age. And the Council? They had stopped thinking about humanity at all. Humans were just there, part of the machinery, reliable, unremarkable, average, the departure. It began 73 days ago, though no one had been paying attention. Human families quietly withdrew their children from multi-species educational centers. Human researchers submitted final reports and closed their laboratories. Human medics trained their replacements with unusual thoroughness, as if preparing for a long absence. And then, on a day that would be marked in galactic history as the Great Silence, every human in Council space simply left. No declaration, no demands, no dramatic speeches or ultimatums. They packed their belongings, boarded their ships, and returned to Earth. The few who were asked why gave the same quiet response. We're going home. The council had barely noticed. There was even relief in some quarters. Perhaps they finally recognized their place, one ambassador had remarked. Support roles were always too generous for such an average species. They would come to regret those words. The realization. Now, 73 days later, the galaxy was learning a terrible truth. Thalenvor pulled up the system failure reports, his luminous eyes scanning through endless scrolling data. Jump gates, medical facilities, power grids, communications networks, agricultural processors, water purification, atmospheric regulation on 17 colony worlds, all maintained by humans, all staffed by humans, all slowly, inexorably failing. Get them back, the Vrexian ambassador demanded. Send a delegation, offer them whatever they want. But the communications officer, a young Peltharian, who had trained under a human mentor, looked up with something like dread in his compound eyes. Overseer, he said quietly, Earth isn't responding to our hails. Then send a ship. We did, sir, 3 days ago. The officer's voice cracked. The jump gate to the Sol system, it's offline. The humans maintained it, you see. They were the only ones who really understood its calibration. We can't reach Earth. Not without them. Thalenvor felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Fear. The galaxy had forgotten what humanity meant. And now, as the lights began to go out one by one across 1,000 worlds, they were about to remember. And Part 1. The first domino opening, day 89 after departure. The Kelvar Prime Medical Center had been a monument to galactic achievement, a gleaming spire of chrome and bioluminescent glass that rose 3 kilometers above the planet's crystalline surface. For 2 centuries, it had been the premier trauma facility in the eastern sectors, treating over 2 million patients annually from 43 different species. Dr. Zell Noth, chief of surgery and a Kelvarite of considerable reputation, stood in Operating Theater 7 and watched his patient die. Suction, he commanded, but the medical drone hesitated, its sensors flickering erratically. Suction now! The machine complied too late. The Xinthian general on the table, a warrior of great renown, convulsed once and went still. The biosign monitors emitted a single flat tone that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. It was the 3rd patient they'd lost that week. All preventable. All due to equipment malfunction. Xelnoth tore off his surgical mask and turned to his staff. Where is Dr. Martinez? Get me Dr. Martinez immediately. His young assistant, a Peltharian named Kiv, looked at him with something like pity. Dr. Martinez left. 11 weeks ago. Don't you remember? All the humans left. The words hit Xelnoth like a physical blow. Martinez. Elena Martinez, who had revolutionized their triage protocols, who had stayed awake for 46 hours straight during the Gamma Sector plague, saving hundreds with her modified resuscitation techniques, who had been so quiet, so unassuming that Xelnoth had often forgotten she was even there, until now. Then get whoever replaced her, Xelnoth snapped. Kiv's antenna drooped. No one did, Doctor. We assumed the equipment was automatic, self-maintaining. Equipment doesn't calibrate itself. Someone has to. Xelnoth stopped, understanding flooding through him like ice water. The humans. The humans were maintaining everything. Yes. Doctor. Xelnoth looked around Theater 7, at the flickering monitors, the unresponsive diagnostic scanners, the surgical drones that now hesitated before every command. How long had Martinez been adjusting these systems? Updating their algorithms? Compensating for drift in their sensors? How long had they all been taking her for granted? The trade routes, day 91. Captain Vorthak of the merchant vessel Infinite Prosperity had been hauling exotic goods across the galaxy for 73 years. He knew every major trade route by heart, could navigate the tricky currents around the Bellion Nebula with his eyes closed, and had never, not once, missed a delivery deadline until today. Navigation status report, he growled, his tusks clicking with agitation. Captain, the beacon network is inconsistent, his navigator replied, tentacles trembling over the console. Beacon TX-447 is offline. TX-448 is transmitting incorrect coordinates. TX-449 isn't responding at all. Then plot around them. I've tried, sir. But without the beacons, I can't guarantee safe passage. The gravitational eddies in this sector are too complex. We need the markers. Vorthak slammed a massive fist on his command chair. The beacon network had been flawless for 3 centuries. Hundreds of thousands of beacons positioned throughout known space, creating a vast web of safe passage through the chaos of stellar drift and gravitational anomalies. Who had maintained them? Who had updated their positions as stars slowly moved through the galaxy? Who had replaced failing units before anyone even noticed? The humans. Always the humans. Vorthak pulled up his manifest. 17 other ships in his convoy reported the same problems. Across the galaxy, trade was slowing to a crawl. Ships that relied on the beacon network, which was everyone, now faced delays, reroutes, or worse. Yesterday, the Stellar Dawn had miscalculated a jump without proper beacon data. All hands lost. Send a message to the Trade Council, Vorthak said quietly. Tell them Captain Vorthak of the Infinite Prosperity is suspending all long-haul routes until the beacon network is restored. Sir, that will cost millions. It will cost lives if we don't, Vorthak interrupted. Do it. As his navigator complied, Vorthak pulled up an old file, a routine maintenance report from 3 years ago. The signature at the bottom read, Chief Engineer Marcus Chen, Human Stellar Navigation Service. The report was 27 pages long. Chen had identified and corrected 43 potential beacon failures before they could even occur. Preventative maintenance. The kind of invisible work that kept everything running so smoothly that no one ever thought about it, until the day the humans stopped doing it. The Diplomatic Corps, Day 94. Ambassador Thurek had been negotiating trade agreements for the Galactic Council for 212 years. He was legendary for his skill, his patience, his ability to find common ground between the most opposed factions. But today, in Conference Room Sigma, he was watching his greatest achievement crumble to dust. The Krathok sovereignty will not accept these terms, roared General Carthan, his battle armor scraping against his chair as he stood. You insult my people with this mockery of a treaty. Your people? The Velian representative's voice dripped with contempt. Your warmongering, barbaric, enough! Thurek's voice boomed across the chamber, but for the first time in his long career, no one listened. The Krathok and Velian delegations were shouting over each other, old hatreds bubbling to the surface like poison. This shouldn't be happening. The Krathok-Velian Accord had been solid for 3 decades, stable, profitable for both sides, but it had required constant maintenance. Constant communication, someone to smooth over the small insults, to reframe misunderstandings, to remind both sides of their shared interests before pride could derail everything. Someone like Ambassador Chen Wei, or Diplomat Catherine O'Brien, or Trade Liaison James Okoye. All human, all gone. Thurek had overseen the Accord signing 30 years ago, but the humans had done the real work, the daily, unglamorous work of keeping ancient enemies civil with each other. They had learned Krathok honor codes and Velian philosophical frameworks. They had shared meals, told stories, built relationships that transcended mere policy, and Thurek had taken all the credit while they did all the work. Now, watching the Accord collapse in real time, he understood with crushing clarity he hadn't been maintaining peace. The humans had. He'd just been standing at the podium taking bows. Ambassador, his aide whispered urgently, the Draconite-Zynthian negotiations are also falling apart, and the Peltharian Trade Summit has been cancelled. Everyone is demanding human mediators, but there are no human mediators, Thurek finished quietly. Not anymore. The Galactic Nexus, Day 96. Overseer Thalenvor stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, his crystalline form dim with exhaustion. Every seat was filled, every species represented, and for the first time in recorded history they were all afraid. 372 critical systems are offline or failing, he reported, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. Medical facilities across 47 worlds are operating at reduced capacity. Trade has decreased by 61%. We have confirmed reports of 17 ships lost due to navigation failures and... He paused, the next words bitter on his tongue. 4 territorial disputes have escalated to armed conflict without human mediators to intervene. Then bring them back. Someone shouted. We cannot reach them, Thalenvor said simply. Earth is isolated. The jump gates to their system were maintained by human technicians. We don't have the expertise to repair them. The silence that followed was suffocating. How? Counselor Mirthas finally asked, his voice small. How did we not see this? Thalenvor looked at the counselor who had once dismissed humanity as average. The answer was simple and terrible. Because we weren't looking. Earth, simultaneously. On a blue world in an unremarkable arm of the galaxy, Secretary General Amanda Okafor stood in the UN Assembly Hall and watched the vote tally appear on the screen. Resolution 2187, Continued Isolation from Galactic Council. Space vote 189 for, against 4 abstentions. The hall erupted in quiet applause, not triumphant, but relieved, satisfied. Madam Secretary, her aide approached carefully. The Council is sending 14 delegations to request negotiation. They're offering, well, everything. Full species status, Council seats, reparations. Amanda looked at the holographic display showing the chaos spreading across the galaxy. Medical crises, trade collapses, conflicts reigniting. All the things humanity had been quietly preventing for 347 years. She felt no satisfaction in it. No vindication. Only a deep, weary sadness. Tell them, she said slowly, that we will consider discussions. In 6 months, maybe, if we decide their apology is sincere. And if they can't wait 6 months? Amanda turned to face the window, looking up at the stars. Those distant lights that had once seemed so welcoming, so full of promise. Then they'll learn what we learned, she said quietly. That respect isn't given, it's earned. And that taking someone for granted is the fastest way to lose them forever. End part 2.